I have a saying that the human body can live for about 30 days without food. The human condition can sustain itself for about 3 days without water. But no human alive can survive for more than 30 seconds without hope, because without hope, we truly have nothing.
Sean is a small child. He was just very adventuresome. He loved to do all kinds of things. He skied, was an excellent swimmer. He's always been a risk taker. But I never, ever thought he would grow up and tackle some of the things that he's done.
I swam forever. And I was a competitive swimmer for years. Years and years. I would run. I played soccer, football, basketball. If it's out there, I probably tried it. But I remember just playing a pickup basketball game, and I was going in for a layup, and I came back, and my feet hit the floor, and my knee buckled. And basically, because of that knee injury, my life was going to change forever.
When he came home, his knee was just really swollen, so I took him to the doctor, and I never will forget when the family physician came out and said, "Terry, do you know an oncologist?" And I said, "Well, sure, I know lots of oncologists." I said, "Who needs one?" He said, "I think Sean might need one."
My mom and dad and the doctors didn't tell me that I had cancer. Back then it was known as the C word, and cancer was associated with death. And the doctors, my parents, and my family didn't want me to be associated with death and have that notion in my mind that, I have cancer, I'm going to die. But I snuck out of my room, my hospital room. I went down into the hospital library and researched to see what Hodgkin's lymphoma was, and that's how I remember actually finding out that I had cancer.
Anytime you hear the word kind of shoots red flags up there, they said he probably had about a month to live. And that was pretty devastating.
They started pumping me full of medicine, pumping me full of steroids, and as a 13-year-old, believe it or not, I was about 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe. And in 8th grade, freshman in high school, it's a popularity contest. Rumors would start flying, Sean's sick, he's back in the hospital, and the worst yet, Sean's dead.
All the things that you go through when somebody has cancer, especially your own child, it's like, it's just heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching. You want to do everything you can to make it better, but there's really nothing you can do except be on the sidelines and hope for the best. It was just so upsetting.
All through battling Hodgkin's lymphoma, I tried to push myself and be as normal as possible. And, when I was sick, I had a Hickman catheter, which is kind of like a permanent IV, which is a tube that was stuck underneath my skin, up underneath, or over my clavicle and into my veins up here, so it would dump right into my heart. So I wouldn't have to go get an IV every single time I went for a treatment. And I had that pulled early so I could actually participate in the league's swim meet. But it was also very devastating to me because throughout all of my swim career, I'd never got beaten. No one ever beat me. Until I was 60 pounds overweight, trying to swim like a whale back and forth through the water.
Dead anxious.
1 year later, I swam with that same meet and didn't get beat. I was back.
We went back to the oncologist, Dr. Davis' office, and it was the first time that he said, "He's doing well enough, let's go 4 months instead of 3 months for your checkups." He said, "This is interesting." And he looked at the x-rays and he said, "I think we've got some problems here." And he took Sean into a treatment room, and his dad and I were standing outside the room, and he said, "I think we've got a different condition that we had before." And he said, "You're not going on a trip at all." He said, your trip's going to be to the hospital.
Because I went through the first one, I knew what cancer was this time. And I knew because of what I went through that time, I sure as hell didn't want to go through it again. I went through it once. I didn't want to go through it again. I knew that I was going to lose my hair. I knew I was going to lose my friends. I knew I was going to lose my life again. My life was essentially over until I got better.
So they ran a battery test. They came up with a protocol after doing much research. And we started all over again.
It's actually a type of cancer that affects 3 out of 1 million people. And if you have 100 people with this exact same cancer, 94 will pass away. No one in the world's ever had or been documented as having Hodgkin's and Askins sarcoma. I'm the only person in the world who ever had both of them.
They said, he has a prognosis of about 2 weeks to live. And I was sitting there going, 2 weeks to live? Wait a minute. How can this be? I remember Sean looking at me. We were in the hospital. And he said, "Mom, I don't think I'm going to make it." He said, looking back on my life, he said, "If I don't make it," he said, "I've had a good life." And to hear that from your 15-year-old or 16-year-old, to think they should have their whole life ahead of them, that's pretty devastating. It's pretty devastating.
Then I went through, it was 3 months of intense chemo, 1 month of that radiation therapy, and then 10 more months of chemo. And every time I went in for a treatment, they put me in a medical-induced coma. I don't remember being 16. Because of the radiation treatment, I don't have the use of both my lungs. There's so much scar tissue that there's no oxygen transfer, so I have basically one fully functioning lung.
I can remember standing up in the stands and the gun goes off at the 800 meters, and he went around once. And all of a sudden, he was coming from the back of the pack. And at the end, it's like he comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, and I'm on my feet screaming, as is the coach. And I don't know where all this energy came from, but he could see the finish line, and he was there. And he said, "I'm not finished yet."
One thing that cancer did teach me was that life is too short. And I wanted to prove to people that anything truly is possible and to give them something I never had, which was hope. And with my brother's help, we did some research and found that if I could summit Everest, no other cancer survivor in history had ever done it.
I honestly think the idea did come out of the blue. I have no idea what inspired him. Maybe he was watching something on TV. I have no clue where it comes from. To this day, I don't know. He had no climbing experience. He knew nothing about mountaineering. But once I knew he was dead set and serious about it, I told him, "Look, Sean, I'm with you. You're my big brother." I jumped on board and said I would support him in any way I possibly could.
Hope you're enjoying Keep Climbing, our feature film for tonight. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, more of the film is coming your way.